Outside the Kennel, the heartbeat of the dog game, where real breeders break down real experiences, and the experts drop the knowledge you can't Google. We're talking structure, bloodlines, nutrition, training, wins, losses, and everything that makes champions in and out of the ring. This is for the ones who live it, breathe it, and build it one litter at a time. Your hosts, Ben and Roderick, lock in.
All right, it'd just be me this week with, our guest. We're going to do another AI episode here on how to break down your DNA panel from Animal Genetics. I got an example from what I hope to be one of my future studs, Banger, and I'm gonna use it and have her explain what a six panel is and what each part of the panel is, and then or what each degenerative condition is for the panel, and then we're going to break down the color and also coats as far as what they mean, and maybe explore pink a little bit as well while we're here. If not, I mean, it's pretty complex, especially if you want to try to get that in the display, so that may be a different episode later, but we'll see. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and give Tessa a chance to introduce herself to the audience.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I'm Tessa, your DNA guide today, and I'll help us break down Banger's genetic results step by step. Let's dig into what his DNA can tell us.
All right. So, can you go ahead and display that, or am I going to need to upload that? The DNA report itself.
No need to worry. I've got Banger's DNA report right here from earlier. I'll walk us through each section as we go, so you can just lead the conversation, and I'll break down the details. Let's go for it.
Can you display that file visually so the audience can see it?
I am not able to display visuals directly to the audience, but I'll guide us through each part of the report verbally. As we explain each section, you can share the details with listeners. Let's paint the picture with clear explanations.
All right, just a second. I'm gonna upload it so that I'm gonna upload the file so that I at least have it.
That sounds perfect. Once you've got the file uploaded for your audience, they can follow along visually while we walk them through each step. I'll be ready to break it down alongside whatever they're seeing.
All right. So there's a couple different ways you can do this when you're using her. You can go back to what you uploaded and what you asked, and I can't remember if this is what it is or not. I think that is it. Let's see.
If you're referring,
there it is. I got it, Tessa. I'm talking to the audience. Don't know where to trouble yourself with what I'm talking about. That is it. There, as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, he's six panel clear, and we'll get her to explain exactly what that is when we get going here, and this is all his color, and of course, these are the patterns, and this right here is the furnishings. Now I hope this is showing on the main screen. I believe it is, but if not, we're gonna go through it in detail anyways for the audio version of this podcast, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem here. So
that sounds great. Whether they're watching or just listening, we'll make sure everyone gets a clear picture. So when you're ready, we'll dive right into explaining what all of Banger's results mean.
All right, so hold on. We're going to... I need to pull that up. All right, Tessa. So we're just going to get started here. Go ahead and maybe explain roughly or quickly what exactly a 6-panel is and why it may be important to a breeding program, and understanding each one of these degenerative conditions as far as how it would help your program and the importance of understanding it.
A 6-panel test typically screens for key inherited conditions that can pop up in a breed. For Frenchies, these often included things like degenerative myelopathy, hyperuricosuria, and juvenile cataracts, among others. Knowing these results helps breeders avoid pairing dogs that might produce at-risk puppies. In short, it's all about informed decisions. You're protecting the next generation and keeping your program healthy.
All right. So let's go ahead and start breaking down these, this panel here. If you want to start with what is CMR1.
CMR1 stands for Canine Multifocal Retinopathy. It's an eye condition where lesions form on the retina. While it may not always cause severe vision loss, testing ensures you don't accidentally produce pups with the condition. In Banger's case, he's clear.
Yeah, so what kind of vision complications could a dog have? And kind of, I know there's no way to quantify it because of nature, but like what would be the likelihood if you had one copy of it for the dog to produce that?
For CMR1, it's a recessive condition. So a dog with just one copy is only a carrier and won't show symptoms. To be affected, a dog needs 2 copies. Even when affected, some dogs only have mild retinal changes, while others might have more noticeable vision issues. But since Banger is clear, there's no risk of him passing it on if paired responsibly.
Right. So if they got 2 copies of it, so it's recessive, it takes 2 copies. What kind of vision impairment could a puppy endure, and at what age would you start seeing these signs?
If a dog inherits 2 copies of the CMR1 mutation, you typically notice retinal changes while they're still young, often as puppies or juveniles. The impact can range from minor spots on the retina, which may not affect vision much, to more noticeable vision impairment. It's usually stable and doesn't progress rapidly, but being aware early helps in managing their environment.
Absolutely, I would think so. So on the next one is a CY2 variant, or CY3 variant 2. It says on here, obviously the dog is negative for this variant. It's so what exactly is that disorder?
CY3 variant 2 relates to a form of cystinuria, which is a condition where the kidneys can't properly filter certain amino acids. In bulldogs, that can lead to bladder or kidney stones. Since Banger is negative, he doesn't carry that variant, meaning he's not at risk of forming these stones due to this genetic factor. It's one less health concern in his genetic lineup.
Right. You don't have to keep mentioning about him being negative. Like this is more of an example so that we can discuss what you might find when you do a DNA health screening. So on the variant 2, on CY3 variant 2, if you had a dog that had 2 copies of this, what are things, special care you may encounter in the future for this dog, or is there anything you can even do to help prevent these kidney stones?
If a dog had 2 copies, meaning they were at risk, you definitely work closely with your vet. Special care might include a low cysteine diet, encouraging lots of water to dilute the urine, and periodic urine tests to catch any early stone formation. In some cases, preventative medications might be recommended. The goal is to manage the condition so stones don't develop or cause discomfort.
When would this be a concern? At what age would you have to start watching for this if you knew that your dog had CY3 variant 2?
If a dog had 2 copies and was at risk, you'd usually start monitoring from young adulthood, often around 1 to 2 years old. That's typically when you'd want to be proactive with diet and regular vet checks, because stones can form early if left unmanaged. It's all about early prevention and keeping that pup comfortable long term.
Okay, so on to the next one, CY3 variant 3. How does it differ? What is it? And then maybe explain how it's different from variant 2.
CY3 variant 3 is another genetic variation associated with cystinuria, but it's less commonly linked to forming stones than variant 2. Think of it as a milder or less impactful variation. In short, if a dog is clear, as in Banger's case, that's great. But even if a dog carried variant 3 alone, the risk of developing stones would still be lower than with variant 2.
Right. So, I mean, we've mentioned that in responsible breeding. We'll take a pause here from that. And so if you bred a dog that you knew had, say, CY3 variant 2 to another dog that had the same disorder, CY3 variant 2, what would be the likelihood of producing, what percentage of the litter would have likely 2 copies of that disorder?
If you bred 2 dogs that both carried 1 copy of the CY3 variant 2, each puppy would have about a 25% chance of inheriting 2 copies, meaning they'd be at risk. You'd also have about a 50% chance of puppies being carriers and a 25% chance of them being completely clear. So, that's why testing is key. It helps avoid doubling up on that risk.
So if they carried 1 copy of CY3 variant 2 and then 1 copy of CY3 variant 3, is there any those 2 completely different genes or different disorders? I mean, and would it matter if they each were carriers of each disorder? Could they develop? Would that make them more likely to develop stones, or each one of those disorders is its own thing?
Both CY3 variants are forms of the same condition, cystinuria, but they're distinct variants. If a dog had 1 copy of variant 2 and 1 copy of variant 3, it wouldn't be the same as having 2 copies of one variant. The dog would typically remain a carrier, not at risk. In other words, they don't combine to increase stone risk. Each variant needs 2 copies of its own kind to cause the condition.
All right, let's talk about one that's a little bit, I don't want to say controversial, but it is argumentative when you discuss it amongst breeders. It's DM. Let's go ahead and explain exactly what DM is, and then we'll talk about the likelihood of a Frenchie developing in it.
DM, or degenerative myelopathy, is a progressive spinal cord disease, sort of like ALS in humans. It can cause weakness and loss of coordination, especially in older dogs. Now, it's rare for Frenchies to show symptoms, even if they carry 2 copies. Still, testing is done so breeders can avoid pairing 2 carriers. In Frenchies, it's more about responsible planning than expecting the disease to appear.
So what's the likelihood of a dog that had 2 copies of DM, of a French bulldog? Because I believe that there's really no recorded case of any Frenchie over 88%, a full-blood Frenchie, having DM. What is the scientific, I guess, or your professional opinion of the likelihood of DM affecting a Frenchie at all with 2 copies?
In French bulldogs, even if a dog has 2 copies of the DM mutation, the likelihood of actually developing symptoms is extremely low. Many experts consider it almost negligible. DM is more prevalent in other breeds, and while we test Frenchies to prevent passing it on, cases of actual clinical DM in Frenchies are practically unheard of. So while testing is good practice, The actual risk of them developing DM is considered extremely rare.
Is there a breed of dog that DM is prevalent in that French Bulldog breeders have been crossing to get these genes, such as albinism or the EA Husky, which is from the Siberian Husky line? Is there any of those breeds that DM is prevalent in that you could accidentally cross a dog that could develop it?
Yes, there are breeds where DM is more prevalent. For example, it's well known in German Shepherds, Boxers, and Pembroke Welsh Corgis. Now, while Frenchie breeders aren't typically crossing directly with those breeds, if someone were to outcross in an attempt to introduce new traits, like a rare color, without careful genetic screening, there's a theoretical risk of introducing DM. But responsible breeders ensure that both health and traits are considered, so that's unlikely if you're testing and breeding responsibly.
Well, unfortunately, that doesn't happen across the board. So that's what I was curious about is what breeds that they're currently crossing Frenchies with that might actually have DMs, because when you do the cross, you no longer got a full-blood Frenchie, right, for several generations. Now you have a 50-50 mix, providing you started with two purebred dogs. And so could that, if you did that and your dog was not purebred Frenchie, could that dog actually develop DM?
Yes, if you cross a Frenchie with a breed where DM is prevalent, like a German Shepherd or a Corgi, then that mixed offspring could carry a higher DM risk, depending on the inherited genes. In that scenario, if that mix had 2 copies of the DM mutation, it could potentially develop symptoms. That's why careful health testing is crucial, especially if introducing new genes, before breeding back into a Frenchie line. Once you test and select away from those risks, over several generations, you're aiming back toward a healthier purebred Frenchie.
Yeah, so it's safe to say that DM don't affect Frenchies as long as you're ethically breeding full-blood Frenchies. It shouldn't be a concern. Of course, it would be the best case scenario would be to have no copies of DM, but if you had 1 copy of DM, it shouldn't be a huge concern or a flag on that dog, in your opinion. Or I guess I'm asking, in your opinion, would that be a flag on that dog?
In a responsible breeding program, a single DM carrier wouldn't be a major red flag. It's common to have carriers in any breed. The key is knowing that, so you pair them with a dog that's clear. That way, you avoid ever producing at-risk puppies. In short, it's not a deal breaker, just a factor you manage with informed breeding.
Okay, so let's go ahead to the next one. HUU. We'll go ahead and explain what that is, and I guess how serious of a condition it is, or disorder, and
HUU stands for hyperuricosuria, and it means the dog has a genetic predisposition to higher uric acid levels in their urine. This can lead to bladder or kidney stones, which can be painful and sometimes require medical intervention. However, if you know a dog carries it, you can be proactive, monitoring diet, hydration, and doing regular vet checks. In short, it's manageable, but something you ought to avoid doubling up on in breeding pairs.
HUU, is it unlike CY3, or is it similar?
HUU is similar to CY3 in that both relate to stone formation, but they're different mechanisms. CY3 involves cysteine stones due to amino acid filtering, while HUU is due to excess uric acid. Both are recessive, meaning 2 copies raise the risk. So they're similar in how you'd manage them, avoiding pairing 2 carriers, but the types of stones differ, so they're distinct conditions to screen for.
Can they affect each other? Say, if you had a dog that had 2 copies of HUU and then 2 copies of CY3 variant 3, would those 2 disorders compound in that dog, or they're completely separate?
They're completely separate conditions. If a dog had both HUU and CY3, each would pose its own risk, one related to uric acid stones, the other to cysteine stones. They wouldn't compound into one single issue, but the dog would have dual risks, meaning you'd need to manage both carefully. Each requires its own prevention strategy, like diet and monitoring.
Okay, and for the last one, JHC, what exactly is that, and how prevalent is it in the breed if you have two copies? And I guess we could go back through. If you have two copies, let me just ask you in general, if you have two copies, that doesn't necessarily mean the dog is going to get that disorder, but what would you say it increases the odds to? But before, and let's do that before you go to the last disorder of JHC.
When a genetic disorder is recessive, having two copies generally means the dog will develop it, but the severity or onset can vary. For JHC, juvenile hereditary cataracts, two copies typically mean the dog will develop cataracts at a young age. In Frenchies, it's not extremely common, but it's well known. If a dog is a carrier, one copy, they won't show it, but if bred to another carrier, there's a 25% chance of affected pups. Testing helps avoid that scenario entirely.
Okay, so go on to the last disorder there. Tell us what it is and what it'll do to a pup if he has two copies.
JHC stands for juvenile hereditary cataracts. If a dog has two copies, it means cataracts form at a young age, often starting between 6 months and 2 years. These cataracts can impair vision and may progress to blindness if not managed. Luckily, with testing, you avoid breeding two carriers, preventing affected pups. In short, it's serious but preventable with responsible breeding.
Yeah. So, how is that in CMR1? Is that in JHC? Are they related or completely separate?
They're completely separate. JHC is a genetic cataract affecting the lens of the eye, while CMR1 is a condition that affects the retina. Both can impact vision, but they act on different parts of the eye. So they're unrelated disorders, each inherited independently.
Well, I do appreciate you explaining all this as far as the 6 disorders that affect French bulldogs that are on the health exam, or the health testing. I believe there's folks out there that you hear about it and you just want to know if they're clear, and then it don't matter. But if you understand what each one is, then perhaps it would help you understand the risk that you are taking if you're messing around with carriers or even dogs that have two copies of some of these disorders, and what kind of impairments you can inflict on a litter if you don't breed responsibly. Any closing statement you have to make on the disorders before we move on to colors?
You summed it up well. The key takeaway is that understanding these conditions empowers breeders to make thoughtful, informed decisions. It's not just about knowing a dog is clear or carrier, it's about using that knowledge to safeguard future litters. Responsible breeding is all about balance, and when you truly grasp the why behind these tests, you're protecting both the dog's and the breed's future. All right, let's dive into those colors.
All right, so on this deal here, obviously we're going to start with the A locus. If you could go ahead and explain, I guess give a definition of the A locus, or an explanation of the A locus, and then we'll talk about the 3. I know this is pretty common DNA knowledge, but there's new breeders all the time, and they may not have an understanding yet. So we're going to go through it because that's what this episode is about.
The A locus is basically a genetic address that determines patterns like fawn, sable, or tan points. In Frenchies, you often hear about AT, which creates those classic tan points. When you know what's at that locus, like if the dog is fawn or carries tan points, You can predict patterns in future litters.
So on the A locus, fawn would obviously on this DNA, on this DNA report, it's AT-AT, which is 2 copies of 10 points. So fawn would be an AY, and just in a solid, and that would produce a fawn dog, right? It's a dominant gene.
Exactly. On the A locus, AY is dominant and typically produces a fawn or sable coat. If a dog has AY, it'll be fawn. Even one AY with something else will still show fawn because it's dominant. When you have AT-AT like here, that's what gives you those tan points. So yes, AY is what you'd look for if you wanted fawn.
And then the other one in that locus is just A, right? And that's solid colors.
Not quite. What you might be thinking of is A, which is actually recessive black. When a dog is AA, it can be solid black. The A locus is all about patterns. AY for fawn, AT for tan points, and A for recessive black. So if you had just AA, you'd get that solid black coat.
Well, now, if you had an AA dog that also had, say, 2 copies of the B locus, it wouldn't necessarily be black, correct? It'd just be a solid B dog.
You're right. If a dog is AA, recessive black, but also has 2 copies of the brown gene on the B locus, like BB, then instead of black, that solid color would appear as chocolate. So, the B locus modifies the base color, black if there's B, chocolate if there's B.
All right, so let's move on to albinism. Go ahead and explain what that is, and then we'll talk about whether that comes with any health risk.
Albinism is a genetic condition where the dog can't produce normal pigment. This results in a very pale coat, pinkish skin, and light eyes. In some breeds, it can come with health concerns, like sensitivity to sunlight or vision issues. In Frenchies, albinism is rare, but if present, those are things to watch out for. Responsible breeding ensures you don't double up on it, preventing those risks.
So you said that it's rare in Frenchies, but more breeders are outcrossing to get it to other breeds, and so I do know that like the Pekingese and Austin Terriers and maybe some others are used to introduce this gene into the Frenchies. Are any of those dogs, like you mentioned, predisposed for a more serious health risk or more likely health risk with the albinism?
Yes, some breeds that naturally carry albinism, like the Pekingese, can be more prone to health issues such as eye problems or skin sensitivity due to a lack of pigment. When outcrossing, breeders need to be cautious, not just about color, but also overall health. If done responsibly, testing for both pigment and health, breeders can manage those risks. But if not careful, introducing albinism from breeds with known health sensitivities could increase the chance of those complications showing up in your lines.
So it would matter where they got the gene from, what breed of dog, is what you're saying.
Exactly. The source breed matters because you're not just bringing in color, you're bringing in that breed's health background too. So if the donor breed has known health issues tied to albinism, you've got to test thoroughly and plan carefully. Responsible breeding isn't just about appearance. It's about maintaining overall health.
All right, so I think that's probably all we're going to touch on that one for now. Let's go on. These next ones should go pretty quick. As far as the BC, as far as B, and then Cocoa, and then the D locus, these are all different color different dog colors or coat colors you can get out of this. I'll just go ahead and say I think everybody knows that the B is testable, Rojo, whatever. It's red basically. It's a chocolate that's red on its own, and then the cocoa or cocoa, it's a dark brown, and the D, which is the dilute, is actually what people call blue, or like in labs, it's silver. But the thing is to produce some of the exotic colors in Frenchies, you got to have a combination of these. Now, all of these are, all of them are recessive, so you got to have 2 copies for them to display. But for like a new shade Isabella, you got to have 2 copies of each of those. So you got to have 2 blues, 2 cocos, and 2 testables. So however you want to look at it, in a Rojo, the blue, you got to remove at least 1 copy so it doesn't display. I don't think that I think it's pretty common information now as far as those 3. Like, if you don't understand those 3, I'm not sure you should. You probably need to up your knowledge level a little bit there. It's not that really advanced, and that DNA's been around for a while. And there's plenty of videos online. Love My Pups, James Choppin, he's got I don't know how many videos explaining this DNA and all the different how to use Punnett squares and everything like that to calculate what the percentage of your litter should be as far as them colors go. So we're going to go ahead and skip forward to the E locus, and we're going to look at this. Like my dog here, Banger, he's EA. He's EAE, so he displays because he has a copy of E. But there are other ways, from what I understand, I haven't proven yet, but to get it to display, and we'll discuss that with Tessa and see if she can shed a little light on that. So Tessa, you ready to get started on the E locus? We're gonna skip through those other ones. I think I explained them well enough.
I'm ready. Let's dive right into the E locus. We'll break down how that EA gene gives that husky-like mask and what's still being explored. Let's help everyone understand this fascinating bit of color genetics.
Now, we'll start by stating that if it was an EE dog, then it would be a solid white dog. If it was, go ahead and break down like what it is a capital E dog. All this is in parentheses here. So if it's a capital E dog, what does that mean?
When we talk about a capital E dog, it means the dog can express its full base color, whether that's fawn, brindle, or black. Essentially, capital E means the dog's color isn't hidden. In contrast, lowercase e means cream, which masks the other colors. So an EE dog shows its full genetic color, while an EE dog would appear cream or white, hiding those underlying colors.
And what's a capital EM dog? Capital E, capital M.
When you see E and M together, that means the dog carries a mask, like a dark shading over the muzzle or face. So an EM dog has that mask on top of its base color. It could be fawn with a mask or another color with a mask. It just means that distinct facial marking will show.
All right. So the EW or the EA, what exactly is that? And explain what it takes to make that visually display.
The EA stands for the ancient red, or what we call the husky gene. It creates that facial mask pattern similar to a Siberian husky. For it to visually show, the dog typically needs 1 copy of EA and 1 copy of E, the cream gene. The cream allows that pattern to show up on top of the base coat. So you need EA plus a cream gene E for that husky-like mask to be visible.
So what if you don't have E? Obviously, if you had a capital E or a mask or a copy of mask or whatever, it's not going to display. Is there another gene that you could have besides lowercase e that would get that pattern, that husky pattern, the EA, to display?
So far in Frenchies, the known consistent way to display that EA mask is by pairing it with the cream lowercase e. While breeders sometimes experiment with other combinations, there's no widely accepted alternative yet that reliably turns on the EA pattern. The cream gene remains the known key to making that mask show up visually.
Okay, so what if, theoretically, you had an EA, capital E dog, but it was a fawn dog. It had a copy of AY. Would that display?
If a dog had EA and a dominant E, along with AY for fawn, the EA pattern would not display. The dominant E lets the fawn color show fully, and the EA mask wouldn't be visible on top of that. In other words, EA needs that cream, E, to let the husky pattern come through. Without the cream, you'll just see the fawn or other base color.
So, if you have, will that pattern show on a fawn dog if you have an EAE dog that's AYAY?
Yes, it will. If you have an EAE dog, so one copy of the husky gene and one cream gene, and the dog is AYAY fawn, the EA pattern can display on top of that fawn base. You'll see that husky-like mask pattern over the fawn coat. So that's the key. EA plus cream allows that pattern to show, even on a fawn dog.
So what if you have an EA, this is my last scenario. If you have a double EA, and the dog's fawn, is that going to display?
If the dog is EAEA and fawn, it still won't display the mask on its own. Without a cream E gene, the EA mask stays hidden. In other words, whether you have one or two copies of EA, you need at least one cream EE to let that husky-like pattern show. So fawn alone won't reveal the EA marking.
So that is a definite. It has to be EAE to display on no matter what color or dominant trait, like a brindle or whatever. So, go ahead and explain the eye locus. You know, basically intent. Well, not basically. It's intensity. Explain what that is. I think you lost her. Looks like she's locked up on me. Sometimes it's gonna do that to you. It's the longer you use this AI, and I pay for this, so I don't know if that matters either. But the longer you use it, the slower it gets. Kind of like your cell phone data. I mean, the more of it you use, the more they slow you down. So sometimes it's good to stop and start her. So anyways, we'll get back to that. All right, Tessa, you're welcome back. I need you to, can you explain the eye locus?
The eye locus is all about intensity. It controls how rich or pale the red or yellow pigment is. So if a dog has... I'm glad that helped. Whenever you're ready to pick back up or dive into another topic, just let me know.
Okay, I think you glitched on me there. Go ahead and explain the eye locus, please.
The eye locus affects the intensity of red or yellow pigment. In other words, it determines how rich or deep the warm tones are in a dog's coat. Some dogs will have vibrant reds, while others appear more washed out or pale. If a dog carries a variant that reduces intensity, those reds or yellows will look much softer. It's subtle, but for breeders, it helps explain variations in coat brightness.
Okay, so if the dog has one copy, does intensity affect something like the EA gene, or how does intensity affect certain genes?
The intensity gene mainly affects the richness of red or yellow pigments, like in fawn or cream coats. It doesn't directly change the EA mass pattern itself. But if a dog has a richer intensity, the underlying fawn or red areas might appear deeper. The EA mask will still show as paired with cream, but the rest of the coat could look more vibrant or more muted depending on intensity.
Okay, so like, how would that affect, like the EA gene?
The intensity gene doesn't alter the EA mass pattern itself. EA is still EA. What intensity might do is impact how vibrant the fawn or red areas are around the mask. So, while the mask pattern will show up if EA is paired with cream, the overall coat, like the fawn background, might appear richer or lighter depending on intensity.
All right, so my next question would be,
Whenever you're ready with that next question, I'm here for it. Just let me know what you're curious about, and we'll tackle it together.
I lost my sheet, so I don't have my report.
No worries. If there's something specific you need to revisit, or if you want to pick up anywhere else, just let me know. I'm here to help.
One second. Pause it just a second.
Take your time. I'm here whenever you're ready to continue.
I ain't got to do that. I can just do this. We'll pull up the report from Animal Genetics, I guess.
It's a lot to keep track of, but you're doing great. If you ever need to revisit.
I appreciate the words of encouragement there. But we got it right here.
Absolutely. Whenever you feel ready, we'll keep rolling forward. Just say the word.
All right. So I'm looking at a different one now. So, okay, discuss the K locus. Let's explain to everybody what the K locus is and how it affects the color of the dog.
The K locus is what determines whether a dog is solid black or solid chocolate, depending on other genes, or if other patterns can show. If a dog has 2 copies of the dominant black KB, it will be solid. But if it has the recessive form KY, then patterns like brindle or fawn from other loci can show through. In short, the K locus acts like a switch, solid or patterned.
No, I thought that KBR was brindle and KB was the solid black.
You've got it right. KB is the dominant solid black, and KBR is the brindle version. If a dog is KBR KY, it can show brindle patterns. If it's KB, that solid color typically dominates, masking other patterns. So, that K locus decides who gets to shine through.
All right, simple enough. I think everybody kind of understands that at this point. Merle, I have a Merle question. Go ahead and explain what Merle is.
Merle is a pattern gene that creates irregular patches of diluted color mixed with full pigment. It's most known in breeds like Australian Shepherds. In Frenchies, it's rarer and needs careful management. Since Merle is dominant, 1 copy will show the pattern. but 2 copies can cause serious health issues like deafness. So Merle must be bred responsibly, usually to a non-Merle mate.
Now, if it's common in a shepherd, like, does it matter if they breed Merle to Merle, or is this a breed specific cautionary tale, or is this for both, for any, like Merle period, no Merle to Merle period?
It's a caution for any breed, not just Frenchies. Breeding Merle to Merle can result in puppies with 2 copies of the Merle gene, often called double Merles. Double Merles are at high risk for serious health problems, like deafness or vision issues. So it's universal. Responsible breeding means never pairing 2 Merles together.
All right, so since it's a pattern, can Merle interrupt the EA gene? Like, if you have an EAE dog that's going to display it, but it's also Merle, could that pattern be distorted? Could the EA pattern be distorted by the Merle?
Yes, Merle can absolutely affect how any pattern displays, including the EA mask. Merle's catchy dilution can lighten or break up the mask pattern in some areas, making it less uniform. So, while the EA mask might still be present, Merle can create a mosaic effect over it, altering how clearly it shows.
All right, so the next one is the S locus. You want to go ahead and explain what that is?
The S locus is responsible for light spotting or piebald patterns. If a dog has copies of the piebald gene, it can have varying amounts of white, ranging from just a little to mostly white with some patches of color. If a dog has no piebald copies, it will have a solid or standard pattern. So the S locus controls just how much white spotting shows up.
So if it's a double S, if it has 2 copies, then what?
If a dog inherits 2 copies of the piebald gene, SPSP, you get a high degree of white. These dogs can be predominantly white with just a few patches of color. The more copies of piebald involved, the more extensive the white pattern tends to be. Conversely, no piebald means you'll have little to no white spotting.
If you breed two pied dogs, that have 2 copies each, is there any danger of like an extreme pied and creating or introducing health risks to those dogs? Is there any concerns with this locus?
While piebald itself doesn't directly cause health issues, breeding 2 extreme piebald dogs can result in puppies with very little pigment. Dogs with large amounts of white on the head or ears can sometimes have a higher risk of deafness due to lack of pigment in the inner ear. So, while piebald is mostly about appearance, careful breeding helps avoid extreme white that might lead to hearing concerns.
So, what is the definition of an extreme pied, so that visually can you just visually recognize this, or is this a test you have to do?
An extreme pied is one that's mostly white with only small patches of color, often just on the head or a few spots on the body. You can usually recognize it visually. If the dog is overwhelmingly white, that's extreme pied. There's no special test for extreme level. It's all about how much white is expressed from the piebald gene.
Now that differs from Merle, because there actually is a test so you can test the level of Merle, correct?
That's correct. With Merle, there are genetic tests that measure the length of the Merle allele, giving you insight into how strong or subtle the pattern might be. For piebald, it's more about what you see visually, not measured by a gradient test. So yes, Merle testing is more detailed in that sense.
All right, well, that pretty much concludes the colors and the patterns. What's left is the coat. So I do want to cover this. I'm interested in the curl gene specifically, but all of the furnishings, because with all this, everybody moving into the flutals, or that becoming so prevalent, I guess should have an understanding. So go ahead and explain the curl gene and what the difference between curl 1 and curl 2 is.
The curl gene influences the shape of a dog's coat. There are two variants commonly discussed, C1 and C2. C1 tends to produce a looser curl, while C2 creates a tighter, more poodle-like curl. When dogs inherit these curl variants, especially two copies, they can develop wavy or curly coats. It's relevant when crossing with breeds like poodles, because understanding these variants helps predict coat texture.
Are these dominant traits to where you just need one copy of C1 to get a longer, wavier hair length, or do you need two copies of C1?
The curl variants are actually semi-dominant, meaning one copy can produce some wave or curl, but two copies will intensify it. For example, one C1 might give a slight wave, while two copies give a more pronounced curl. The same goes for C2. So more copies mean more curl.
So if you had a dog with a copy of C1 and a copy of C2, would those two affect the coat? Would they work off of each other to affect the coat?
Yes, if a dog has one copy of C1 and one copy of C2, they do combine. You'd get a more pronounced wavy or curly coat than if the dog only had one copy of either. Since both influence curl, together they amplify the effect, resulting in a curlier coat overall.
No, this is not something we went over earlier. I just thought of it. So are you familiar with what a flutel is and how the curl gene influences that or affects creating a flutel?
A flutel is just a fun term people use for a Frenchie crossed with a poodle. When you mix them, that curl gene from the poodle side plays a big role in the coat. If the Frenchie inherits those curl variants, you'll get a wavier or curlier coat, sometimes resembling a teddy bear look. So the curl gene is key if you're aiming for that fluffier flutel coat.
Okay, so there is I guess a difference in the breeding world of a teddy bear coat versus a flutel. So does C1 lean more towards one than the other, and does C2, because you said it was tight like a poodle, would that be a necessary gene to have to create the flutel?
You've got it. C2, being the tighter curl, is more associated with the classic poodle-like coat, so it's often what gives flutels that signature curly look. C1 produces a softer wave, which some call a teddy bear coat. So, if you're aiming for a true flutel curl, C2 plays a bigger role. C1 gives that gentle wave, which some people prefer as a plush teddy bear style.
All right, so playing off of that, I think the furnishings, they're necessary in a flutel.
Yes, furnishings are key for that classic poodle-like flutel face. Furnishings are what give the dog those longer eyebrows, mustache, and beard. Without them, you'll have a curl or wave on the body, but a smooth face. So for that full flutel look, you definitely want furnishings in the mix.
Is it dominant trait? Do you need one copy or two copies?
Furnishings are dominant, so one copy is enough to produce that classic bearded look. If a dog has even one furnishings gene, you'll see those longer facial hairs. If a dog doesn't inherit any copies, it'll have a smooth face, no matter how curly the rest of the coat may be.
Now, if it has two copies of furnishings, will it intensify that effect?
No, having two copies doesn't really intensify the furnishings. One copy is enough to give that classic beard, eyebrows, and mustache. Two copies simply mean the dog will pass furnishings to all offspring. But visually, one copy gives that signature look just as well.
So back to a previous question, as far as creating a flutel, you would need C2 and a copy of furnishings?
Exactly. To get that signature flutel look, you'd want at least one copy of the furnishings gene for that beard and mustache. And if you're aiming for a tighter poodle-like curl, the C2 variant is what brings that tighter curl pattern. Combine those, and you've got yourself a fluted coat.
And so that brings us to the next one, which is the length. So if it's, how is that explained? So there's L1 through L5, and this particular dog I'm looking at, it's not Banger, but say it was an L4 fluffy dog. What exactly does the 4 mean?
The numbers like L4 don't represent a hierarchy of length from shortest to longest. Each L variant is just a different genetic mutation that can cause a long coat. L4, for example, is one known long coat variant. When a dog is L4, that means it's going to have a long, fluffy coat. So the number just indicates which specific long hair mutation the dog carries.
So would that indicate what breed it came from, or something else?
The number doesn't tell you the breed it came from. It's just a way to label different mutations that cause long coats. For example, L4 might be common in Frenchies, while another variant might be found in a different breed. What matters is that any two long coat variants, like L4 or L1 will produce a fluffy coat.
Okay, so there's no way of knowing how long the coat will be based off of that number. So anybody that says L1s are longer or L4s are longer, is that statement false or what?
Exactly. Those numbers don't indicate length differences. Each variant just represents a distinct genetic mutation causing long hair. Whether it's L1, L4, or another, if a dog has two long coat variants, it'll be fluffy. The specific number doesn't mean one is longer than another. That's a myth.
So when you're pairing these, if you got L1 and L4, would it be better to have the same variant to get a better coat or a better hair length? So like does pairing L1 with L4 matter at all, or is it a better outcome if you have L1 and L1?
It doesn't matter which long coat variants you pair, whether it's L1, L4, or L1, The outcome is still a fluffy dog. The variants are just different genetic mutations that cause long hair, and mixing them won't change the length or quality. As long as there's a pair, you'll get the long coat.
So what would you say is the determining factor on hair length? Because there's different type of fluffies. As far as some of them are just hairy on the ears and their coat's not near as long, and some of them are extremely long. What gene would determine the hair length there? Would that be the curl?
The length of the coat is primarily determined by those long hair variants like L1, L4, and so on. The curl gene adds texture, wavy or curly, but it doesn't dictate length. If a dog has two long coat variants, you'll get a longer, fluffy coat. If a dog has only one or none, it'll have a shorter coat.
No,
so the long hair genes are the main factor in determining how long that fluff gets.
Okay, so if the number if the L1 or L4 doesn't determine length, what exactly? Why would one dog that has L1 have longer hair than another dog that has L1?
The reason two dogs with long coat genes might have slightly different hair lengths often comes down to other factors, like overall health, nutrition, or minor genetic modifiers that aren't part of the main L variants. The L variants guarantee long coats, but the exact fluffiness or length within that category can still vary a bit. It's like one person's curly hair might be tighter than another's, even if both have curls.
All right, and that brings us to our last section here, which is shedding. The shedding gene. You want to explain what that is and how it might benefit a dog, or not?
The shedding gene, often associated with variants like MC5R, influences how much a dog sheds. In breeds that are lower shedding, like poodles, this gene helps reduce the amount of hair they lose. If a dog inherits a low shedding variant, it might shed less, which is appealing for allergy-prone owners. But for a Frenchie, which naturally sheds more, introducing a low shedding variant might help reduce shedding if that's the goal. In short, it doesn't affect coat length, but can reduce the amount of hair left behind.
So is it a recessive or dominant? Do you got to have 2 copies, or will 1 copy help and 2 copies better, or it doesn't matter?
Shedding reduction is usually influenced by dominant variants. 1 copy of a low shedding variant typically already reduces shedding. If a dog has 2 copies, shedding may be even further minimized. But even 1 copy can make a noticeable difference. So, a single copy already helps.
So in this report, though, if it doesn't have any copies, if it has 1 shedding gene, that's bad. That doesn't mean that it's going to shed less. That means that it's going to shed more than a dog that doesn't have any copies of it, correct?
No worries, having 1 copy of a normal shedding gene just means the dog will shed like a typical Frenchie. No extra shedding, but no special reduction either.
What if it has 2 copies of the shedding? Will it shed more or less?
If it has 2 copies of the normal shedding variant, it'll shed more. Basically the typical shedding you'd expect from a standard Frenchie. To reduce shedding, you'd want at least 1 copy of the low shedding variant.
So you would want it on this particular report.
I'm sorry, but you've hit the daily limit for advanced voice.
Hold on. It does this sometimes. Let me go back. You end it. I can't end it. Man, we're right here at the end. Anyways, on a animal genetics report, what I'm gathering is you would want it to say no. You want it to be NN for it to oh, now I can't get it to stop. Well, this is a runaway. She got a mind of her own sometimes. But we did make it all the way through that deal. And I'm going to stop sharing here. And we'll go ahead and close this one out. I apologize for the dead air here. I'm not that great at this yet. But I'm getting there. All right, stop share. There you go. Oh, all right. So here we go. All right, so that'll just about do it. That was a complete breakdown of an animal genetics report that you would get off a typical Frenchie. It may vary for other dogs. I don't know. I haven't done those yet, but I don't know if it's an end-all be-all and how serious you should take all this information, but it is very helpful. Like, if you can stay away from especially the vision and the urinary problems and your disorders, that'd be ideal. And if you do these tests, it's worth doing these tests, because then you don't want to make mistakes, because, like I said, they're not going to manifest until later in life. That your client or you will have this dog, and 2 years later you're starting to have all these problems, and there's no way to go back and fix it, because by then you've already sold a litter or 2 off of that combination of dogs. So your clients, if you're a breeder, a year from now they may think you're great, and then a year from now when this dog starts having all these problems and they have to spend all this extra money at the vet, your name's going to be shit. and it could be an honest mistake. But if you do the testing, the likelihood of that happening is reduced, and I guess you'd fall more into that ethical breeder, and maybe not so much as a backyard breeder, which is a topic that should be discussed at some point of what exactly that is. But anyways, and also if you're trying to produce a certain type of dog, like Rojo's pretty hot, and it's always been, if you got a lot of blue in your program, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle to get that because you only have so many chances, and these litters are average 4 or 5, so if you chance at 25%, and then whether you want a male or a female, that's 50-50. The percentages get down there pretty low that you're going to get exactly what you want, unless you know how to put the odds in your favor. It doesn't guarantee anything, but the better your odds are, the more likely you are to hit that home run that you're looking for. And as far as with all these new fads like the Flutel, I don't know how long that's going to stick around, but if you're trying to get there, or you want to know, even if you want to purchase one, you need to know how to read the DNA, because nobody's going to sell you that. They shouldn't be selling you that dog for any amount of money that if they don't have DNA. If you're buying one at this point without DNA, like, that's on you. But if they tell you, if they've done some kind of cross and they got a half-ass looking Flutel or teddy bear, and they won't show you the DNA, well, I mean, you don't know what you're getting. So you can use, the whole point of this episode is, and I'm gonna do a few of them with the AI. It's kind of tedious because you gotta go through and do a lot of research with it, so it's familiar with the research you're doing, and you kind of got to educate it to how you ask questions, but you can work with it, and you get probably more truthful answers than you do from a lot of breeders, because there are not the good ones, but there are breeders out there that just learn enough to basically, they're just repeating what they heard an adult say. They don't really know the ins and outs, but and there's nothing wrong with not knowing, because there's a lot that I don't know, and I still every day am trying to learn something. But the difference is I'll tell you I don't know. I'll tell you right now, like I'm doing the EA, and I don't understand all of it, but I'm gonna learn, and I'm not trying to experiment on the dogs to learn. Like, I would like to have information, as much of it as I can get, to make the most informed decision and pairing that I can. And I think any breeder that is worth their weight in salt that's what they're going to do. So there's a lot of them up there that they just know, they're just good. They already know, they've been doing it for so long. All this stuff is 101 to them, and then there's some of us that's only been in the game a few years, and we're playing catch up. And unfortunately, not all of them are honest, and not all of them are forthcoming because they don't want you passing them. So it is your responsibility to learn and expand your horizons, and that way it's if your program is going to succeed, you have to be the driving force. You can't rely on other people to give you knowledge all the time. Like, sometimes you're just going to have to go earn it. And this is a tool. This is not an end-all be-all, because if you remember, a couple times she was vague or it was incorrect what she was saying about, especially about the EA. It's still pretty new, so she gets her. If you'll pay attention, when you ask a question, it'll cite where it's getting the information from. It'll tell you the website up there. It'll flash across the screen, and so she's gathering it too, so she can get incorrect information. So this can't be the sole source, but for breaking down a DNA or a pedigree or something like that, you can upload that photo or that PDF to her, and that's a factual thing. So like she can tell you what a disorder is and what to look for and things like that. I've actually done it to upload pictures of puppies, and I intend on doing an episode of that where it was a puppy I suspected to be in hydro, and I uploaded a photo of it from multiple angles, and she examined those photos and come back and said she does not believe that puppy to be a hydro, but these are the things to look for and to check back with her in a couple weeks. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And puppy turned out not to be hydro. She was right. Now, I don't know. It was one-on-one opportunities. She may be right wrong the next 3 times. I don't know. But this is a tool that you can use to better yourself. And like I said, you don't base your entire program off of it, but it's available. And if you don't use it, it's so cheap. And there's so much more you can do with it too. Like you see them all over the internet, the photos that are generated. I use it myself. I take puppies and I cut them from the photo and put them in a more cute background or something. When I'm showing off puppies or creating content, there's so much you can do with it to better your program. It's just a matter of you getting in there and learning it, and not putting that stigmatism on it that you're I don't know, that you're relying on AI or something like that. It's a tool. You can't build a house with just a hammer, but that is one tool you gotta have. And I would describe AI as the same way. You're not gonna build your whole program with it, but it is a big tool once you learn how to use it. Like I said, I'll do another one. I've created spreadsheets to track, my female cycles and litter sizes and problems with litters so that I could, if I have a bloodline in here that's giving me a continuous problem, I don't have to remember back, oh yeah, a year ago I had this problem, I think. It's all there. And I can create spreadsheets that'll track it, graph it, and all I got to do is tell her what I want her to create. I don't have to remember all the formulas anymore. I don't have to. She make you lazy. But things like that, it is very, very useful. And I'll be doing one of those in the future. I don't know necessarily when, but I'll show how she can be useful with other things. So you can get to, if you're watching on YouTube, you had a video, you can see the screen. I don't know how helpful that was, but if you're just listening, you can go to YouTube, and I'm going to post this video. I figured out the audio problem from last time, so this video will be up there on YouTube. And until next time, I appreciate the 17 listeners that I got, and I hope this helps in your breeding program, because it doesn't just pertain to Frenchies. This is any dogs that you maybe cats too. I don't know. I don't breed them. But anyways, y'all have a good day, and until next time.
Welcome to Outside the Kennel, the heartbeat of the dog game, where real breeders break down real experiences, and the experts drop the knowledge you can't Google. We're talking structure, bloodlines, nutrition, training, wins, losses, and everything that makes champions in and out of the ring. This is for the ones who live it, breathe it, and build it one litter at a time. Your hosts, Ben and Roderick, lock in.